Intro. Welcome to Flywheel, your number one source for everything FrxETH and everything in between. If you want to know what's going on in the world on chain, well, you come to the right place. This is DeFi Dave here with Capital K. We're here to help you harness the power of the flywheel and talk about Flywheel. It's in the name. It's in his profile picture. It's the alchemical flywheel, Ouroboros Capital, on the show, giving his Frax thesis and showing his conviction and showing how he has his conviction on his sleeve. Kit, thoughts on this one? What should people expect?
Paper, note taking. So good. And listen to how he answers all of, to prevent this from being an echo chamber, I tried to ask all of the objective or like the risk-driven questions. So listen to how he addresses each of these. And obviously we didn't prep him. This is from his own analysis, from his own research. And that is, what he has to say. So pay attention to that too.
Take notes, everyone. You heard the man. And take notes on every episode because we keep coming at you with alpha. If you want to keep up with all the alpha, make sure you hit that bell button, subscribe, leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and hit that like button. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Flywheel DeFi. Join our Telegram group at Flywheel DeFi. Follow me on Twitter at DeFiDave22.
And follow me at 0xcapital_K.
And let's get the Ouroboros spinning. Do you hold ETH but don't know what to do with it? Want to earn those juicy liquid staking derivative yields but don't know where to start? Well, FrxETH is there for you. FrxETH is Frax's native LSD solution, allowing you to earn boosted yields in multiple ways on your ETH. If you want to get started, go to app.frax.finance and turn your ETH into FrxETH today. All right, everyone. Welcome to Flywheel. And we have a really, really exciting episode on our hands today. We have on Mr. Ouroboros Capital. Ouroboros has been in the Frax community for some time and has been an active investor in the chat, in the forum, has a lot of great insights, and we really wanted to get him on just to just see how he thinks and what his whole viewpoint. And he has a written thesis about FXS coming out pretty soon. So we're going to get into all that on this episode. Ouroboros, or you say OU, thank you for coming on.
Hey, pleased to be on, and thanks for having me, guys.
Of course. Now, I want to start this episode off not with DeFi, but with your name, Ouroboros, because I'm really into alchemy and Gnosticism. And I'm going to take a quote from the Wikipedia page about Ouroboros, about Jung, and in the Jungian psychology section, it says, in the age-old image of the Ouroboros lies the thought of devouring oneself and turning oneself into a circulatory process. For it was clear to the more astute alchemists that the prima materia of the art was man himself. The Ouroboros is a dramatic symbol for the integration and assimilation of the opposite. Example of the shadow. This feedback process is at the same time a symbol of immortality, since it is said of the Ouroboros that he slays himself and brings himself to life, fertilizes himself, and gives himself birth. He symbolizes the one who proceeds from the clash of opposites, and he therefore constitutes the secret of the prima materia, which unquestionably stems from man's unconscious. Now, with that preview, how'd you get your name?
Big question. So I also, I think, by some chance discovered the symbol. I think then I started doing some research on it, and there are obviously multiple interpretations of it. It's found in all sorts of ancient Greek scriptures, Egyptian scriptures, and I like the multiple interpretations of it actually, and I think it has a lot of meaning associated with it that's relevant to DeFi, as well as how as well as how I see life in general. I mean, if you think about DeFi, even though today, especially in the bull market, most of the revenue by protocols were actually in one way or another derived from emissions, right? Yeah. So in a way, it's sort of this circular reference that I think the Ouroboros also represents. That it just goes round and round, and no one really knows what's constantly sending this virtuous cycle. Or the flywheel, for lack of a better word. And at the same time, I also like how it represents how the snake sort of goes through this, as you mentioned, devouring itself, right? The cycle of pain, but also constantly evolves and reiterates and gets stronger. And I think that's also, again, another thing that we're seeing in some of the survivors of the bear market.
Yeah, I think the snake really symbolizes you either devour yourself, you completely devour yourself and you're done, or you're evolving, you're consuming yourself, but you're not consuming yourself entirely, you're growing. And, the right DeFi protocols, they're growing cyclically. And, and I think one of them is Frax, of course. Talk about flywheels.
100%.
So, before we get into Frax, what's your background and how'd you get into investing and how'd you get into crypto?
Yeah, so, it goes way back. So I was one of those really odd kids that, liked investing and trading even before college. So read a ton of, like Buffett books, equity trading, investing and whatnot. And always thought that, I wanted to, be a professional equities trader. Started my career trading equities, investment bank for close to 7 years. Discovered Bitcoin in 2012, but it was really early. But I always thought it was just a purely speculative, turbocharged speculative. I wouldn't even call it an asset class at that point. And several point in time in 2012, 2017. I revisited, speculating in crypto, but it was only really until 2021, during DeFi summer, where I've come to learn that DeFi protocols have revenue and actually behave very much like companies, tech companies, developing technology, deriving fees and revenue of these businesses, that it started to look more equity-like to me. And that is how, I thought it was absolutely at the frontier of, growth tech, and wanted to get into it. So I think at the tail end of 2020 and early 21, I was doing a bunch of really degen shit, working from home on DeFi. And I remember the first week of going back to the office in 21, I just realized I can't do my job anymore. I was just absolutely distracted, and I just can't do it anymore. And I just can't be. I can't be doing bug. This.
You got addicted to the game.
Yeah, I just can't. Focus on my job, and I just have to watch all these farms that I was in, nonstop, and looking at coins. And at that point, you even today you can't just rock up and say, "Hey, I want to join a crypto fund," right? So. It was not possible to, just transit from a job in an investment bank, being a trader, to just tomorrow being at a crypto fund. And the best way to do this was to just quit my job, to quit my job and move it on my own capital. So that was what I did for a bit, and sort of, started trading my own capital, but using, very equity-like lens, knowledge and sort of context that I've learned in my 7 years careers in equities. But I think a year into that was when I raised external capital. So we raised from a family office, and we're now running external capital, and that is where we are.
Nice. Congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Yeah. So in your DeFi journey, when did you first stumble upon Frax? And did you develop your conviction in Frax immediately? Did you say oh, I get it? Or was it something that, happened over time?
Very early on, I think even in the first iteration of Frax, I knew about Frax, the time when Cineridge was a thing, when
Wow.
Were you in ESD and DSD, Ouroboros?
Yeah, I did a bunch of those vegan shit as well.
Kid, were you in those things?
Yeah, I was in the iron finance thing.
Me too. I was in that. Did you get out?
Yeah, I got out.
Me too.
Yeah, but so I really like that idea, but also at the same time I could see why it was totally unsustainable. But what really got my attention about Frax was how it seems like Sam Casemian never has to sleep. And he was just all the time replying to the stuff on the Telegram chat. And that gave me an absolutely positive impression of the founder and the team, because, in my equities, when you trade equities, you interact a lot with management. It's more of a people, I would say it's more of a people type of instrument than, foreign currency or, commodities. Equities is a lot about, reading the founder, the DNA of the company, the team, how they typically behave around situations. And Sam, I think, struck me as someone that was willing to even answer, questions from, the normal guy and the Frax chat, even the questions that were extremely basic. I think that struck me off as a really A+ team and founder. So that got my attention.
Can we actually go into that point where you said in equities,
sure.
It's really a people judgment call, when more so than commodities or foreign currencies. I haven't heard that before, but can you explain that point a bit more?
Yeah, I mean, certain companies I think a good example that's relatable for all of us is Michael Saylor, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You see, I mean, the thing is, my strategy is like a pseudo Bitcoin ETF at this point. But the point is, he's so damn convicted about BTC that they raise debt, they raise equity, buy more Bitcoin, that it becomes this, that this guy that's running the ship would be absolutely buying the dips. So you're not only getting a Bitcoin ETF, you're getting something that would turbo bid Bitcoin when, it's peak fear, when it's dipping. And that's sort of how I would describe it, that knowing the DNA of the guy at the helm of the ship helps you also understand the behavior of the stock, right? And how, it tends to behave around certain situations.
Yeah. And so what characteristics do you look for in a founder or head of the ship?
I think someone that's just nonstop, like obsessed about, developing the product, evolving it, not fixed on one iteration. And I think we've seen that. I think that's, I obviously didn't, I didn't absolutely got convinced of that from day one about Sam, but I think through the multiple iterations of Frax, I think he has more than convinced me that he thinks about this day and night and is absolutely obsessed about it. And judging from how active he is on the Frax Telegram. And so I think that the issue with a lot of DeFi founders is they're young, right? And there are people who has come to wealth so quickly, so young. A bunch of them end up owning super yachts, partying with models every week. Yeah, the incentives, they get distracted, right? And I think you can tell, like, some of these protocols post-developing V1, they stay static. We see that, right, without naming names. But Sam is just still on the Frax Telegram every day, regardless of the time. I see him there Asia morning, Asia evening, he's just there. So I think that tells you that, at least, that the guy driving the car is wide awake and paying attention.
Okay, how do we get the rest of the market to think like you do about founders? Yeah. And how do we get the rest of the market to like show, like, be like, yo guys, like, look who's in the fucking chat 24/7, not sleeping, answering every question, whether it's a basic question or the most advanced question.
But also because O is in the chat every day too,
every day.
It takes the other side as well to recognize real, Yeah.
Yeah, so this is a good question which I'm also struggling to find the answer to. But I'll give you a story, right? Just yesterday or the day before, I was talking to this trader, right? He's at one of the big market makers that definitely anyone would know if I name it. He runs the trading book, and I was just talking to him about Frax. And this guy's obviously, we're talking top tier level, savvy institutional crypto investor. But even so, there are many concepts within Frax that were still complex to him. I was basically talking to him because I was walking him through my thesis, explaining to him certain concepts, and that made me realize that, look, if this guy hasn't fully wrapped his head around it, how can we expect the general population of traders and investors to do that, right?
This is something that me, Kit, and Sam struggle with every day, and we're slowly
Exactly.
overcoming. And like we've
Yep.
definitely seen more Fraxmas come around and more threaders come out. Shout out Stable Scarov. There's so many. Shout out Poopman DeFi. Like there's so many. Like I can't name them all, but more like
100%.
yeah, like they've like because of Flywheel and other people in the community and the efforts we've been doing, we have been making a little bit of effort. We've been shipping at it. We've been shipping, and that's all you can do, especially in the bear market.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
also
and
want to ask.
I think you, yeah, go on.
I just want to ask.
No,
Is there
I
a
was just gonna
east
say, I
versus
think you
west
guys,
difference?
did.
Oh wait,
I was just gonna say, I think
yeah.
you guys did like a absolutely great job, and definitely a very strategic muscle, for Fract. And I've been in that chat since V1, so I've also seen how the community has developed. So kudos to you guys. I think you're definitely a big part of that as well.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, go
I
on.
didn't mean to cut you off. Yeah, I wanted to ask if you saw any kind of difference between like the East reception of Frax versus like the Western markets reception of Frax.
That's a good question. I mean, I have this general, I'm not sure whether it's true or not, but I have this general impression that investors in Asia are more degen.
Yeah.
And I
little
think
bit.
they find concepts that are complex, and not, I would say, degen, and they don't take the concepts that are complex and at the same time does not give you like the 10x immediate upside. And I think that's what puts them off about something like Frax, because I can go on explaining Frax the whole day and I can tell them that, hey, look, it makes like 20 million in revenue, and they're like, 20 million, that's nothing.
Yeah, they're like, but how does it pump? How do we pump it?
I need something that makes 20 million with like 50 million market cap. And they'll be like, this project is too old. It's too big. So I think they're less interested in blue chips, and they're more interested in narratives. Which is I think what creates a lot of dislocations in the market as well, which is good for guys like me.
Do you think more narratives come out of the East or West?
Well, it's a good question. I don't think there is. I actually don't think there is a sort of specific location that comes out from. I think narratives. I think narratives stem from this inner circle of people within crypto behind the scenes just trying to profit from creating stories. That's my conspiracy theory. I have no evidence of that, but that's my conspiracy theory, and I think that's sort of what turns the rumor mill.
I think it's a combination of conspiracy, but I feel like conspiracy plays much less of a role than people think. I think these things just naturally form and they become self-fulfilling prophecies. For example, at the beginning of the year, you had the LSD narrative. And I think anybody with a brain could see the LSD narrative coming from a mile away. It just took until it literally took DGen Spartan tweeting a meme that referenced something that he posted 3 years ago about Rocket Pool and Coin or Lido and Coin or some shit. That to get everybody threading about LSD, it just takes like a little snap like that, and then boom, everybody has that narrative on the tip of their tongue. And like in my opinion, like how I like to categorize the East and West in terms of the DNA is I feel like generally the West is builders in DNA and the East is generally traders in DNA. That's not mutually exclusive, but like from my observations and from being out there, it's a lot more trader centric in the East. And I'm just like wondering, like, I always wonder, how do you like bridge the gap between the two? Like, how do you get like, them to like work together to grow the space and grow, the market cap in general?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the function of that is as well, very similar in tech, right? Like traditional tech, as you have these like big tech colleges in the US. There's just natural culture that they want to be an entrepreneur. America is like the land of entrepreneurship, right? So there's this culture and this DNA, but at the same time, I think it's strange as well because you see a lot of tech entrepreneurs coming out of China, but I think naturally because of crypto and it's standing in there, that growth is still not turbocharged yet, right? So perhaps we'll see a wave of that coming in the future, and it's more free. But I think we raised a good point about the marriage of the builder and investor, and I think that's sort of where I see Ouroboros Capital fitting. I like to describe ourselves as being very hands-on type of investors. We're not just cutting checks, but also be using our voice and our network and as much as we can, whoever we know within crypto, to help the protocol achieve its objectives, achieve its growth, connecting them to people, being really vocal and explaining certain concepts and helping the general public understand a certain protocol and therefore crystallize what we think is the value that it has not yet crystallized, right? So activist investor, I guess, is the term to use, but I think definitely that there is a lack of that within crypto, and as we get more and more of that, I think that's where we can see founders and builders working hand in hand with investors as well.
I think we've seen attempts at activist investing, but they just didn't go well. I'm not going to name names, but yeah.
I mean, I
would also add one more point about the East and West, and then Kit, you can ask your question. So, I feel like people. Satoshi Nakamoto, it's in his name, Japanese, like references Japanese in origin, but also at the same time, like in the first Genesis block, he references, the UK, like the banks on the brink of second bailouts. So it's like Satoshi knew that the future of crypto was going to come from the East, but also like builder in DNA. Like that's how I kind of view it too.
Yeah. I mean, for sure, I think China played a massive role in springboarding crypto, right? Most of the original bidders and owners of Bitcoin were very Chinese and they're miners. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So along this line of thought, right? I wanted to dig into what do you think can help Frax become more trader friendly and kind of get its worth of attention share. Like, I feel like FXS could cure cancer and still be down on the charts. I just don't get it.
This is a good point. I always see this saying in some of the chats I'm in. That's a cursed coin, right? People like to say that. But I think we're on the way there, right? I mean, I remember. What's that site like stats.frax finance, and we have Frax Academy. I mean, those, it was so difficult to understand. It was so difficult to understand the revenue streams, these moving parts, but we're slowly developing those, and those dashboards, to be honest, they're still quite complex to navigate sometimes. But I think we're definitely on our way there. And I think eventually when we develop that ecosystem of, dashboards and data that's so intuitive for people to navigate and track, that will definitely take Frax into becoming a much more institutional friendly and retail friendly as well, investment product.
Yeah, you can really see the emphasis the team is putting on both the Frax.finance website, on the new docs that are coming out that Drake's been pushing and getting feedback on. I think the team recognizes the importance of attracting, that type of institutional capital. And in order to do that, you have to present Frax in a certain kind of way.
Yep. And
Yeah.
for have a shameless plug here, we also have the academic incentive program where you could come and
Frax
create
ecosystem
dashboards, infographics, or anything to simply educate and spread how Frax operates.
threaders.
Yes, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Oro, I think you are absolutely spot on about creating like Frax information more accessible. And I like the way that Frax is doing it from like a bottoms up, community centric, like let the threaders do their thing, let the dashboard builders do their thing, and the Dune wizards do their thing, and just let that narrative take on its own. It's just, I guess now we just got to be patient and wait it out. You know, it is like the sit on hands moment. It's like wait until the market recognizes that we are right.
And it's a lot more organic too.
Yeah.
Sustainable.
Do you guys know? Do you guys know if like the Frax Academy and Stats Frax sites are actually by the community or like does someone
that's
from
by
the
the
Frax team run them?
That's by the team.
Oh, those are by the team.
Yeah,
Okay.
those
okay.
are by the team. Those are by the team. But then Seba, who actually created the first Dune dashboard, who was also happens to be the first Flywheel guest, created like a couple more dashboards on Dune, and then he created this recent one tracking FrxETH on Flipside Crypto. So there's also a big problem of like this diaspora of dashboards across kind of like the ecosystem that is not all in one place. Like DeFi Llama has some pretty good stuff too about Frax, but overall it's just kind of all over the place.
Yeah, I remember Seba. He wrote this massive mirror that helped me understand AMOs. To be honest.
Yeah. Speaking of making Frax more accessible, Ouroboros, how would you describe Frax in a few sentences with someone with a basic grasp of DeFi?
Wow, I would say that it's trying to create, a decentralized stablecoin that does not need any centralized entity to run on, using parts of DeFi like Curve, with just borrow land and all that. I think that's the easiest way to describe it. But you asked a good question because even trying to describe that is tough, which is it tells you how complex it is.
Yeah, it's you guys ever see that meme of there's like the person like above ground and then you go deeper in the ocean and it gets like darker and weirder and weirder and weirder and then like it's like the lowest point, it's a beluga whale. Like Frax AMOs are like down like near the beluga whale section.
Yeah. This AMO stuff is really giga brain to be honest, but I think as a result of that, it's also hard to explain.
Yeah, like Kit, how would you describe Frax in a few sentences?
Man, putting me on the spot right here.
Yeah, I'm putting you on the spot. Yeah,
I would say
tables have turned.
Frax is a stablecoin producing protocol that has 3 stable coins, Frax, FPI, and FrxETH, and they utilize a set of sub protocols such as FraxLend, FraxFerry, and FraxSwap to facilitate the DeFi Holy Trinity effectively for the stable coins.
Yeah, you pretty much got my definition. I'll take a crack at it. So, what is Frax to you? Hey, if you're listening to this and you're on YouTube, write down in the comments how would you describe Frax in a few sentences. Come on. Okay. But yeah, so I agree. Frax is a protocol that issues decentralized innovative stablecoins and also builds sub-protocols to support them. AMOs are basically how the protocol backs Frax and its stablecoins. I like to say that Frax is backed by DeFi. Frax is backed by Curve LP tokens. Frax is backed by its activities that it does throughout DeFi. And that's what really gives it a leg up above everyone else.
Cool. And so just to double down on this, I want to ask you, like, what stands out the most about Frax to you?
I think a team for sure, 100%. That's the first thing. The second thing as well is I think the many parts that comes together makes it able to run without anyone meddling with it, to be honest, right? If you think about the AMOs is a great example pre the AMOs, the peg was, I think, a little more clunky, but post the AMO, basically it runs by itself. The peg manages itself. And I think these numerous parts, as we add more and more of them, we see how it grows bigger and bigger and becomes it runs more and more smoothly, and it becomes this better oiled machine.
Yeah. On your first point, I don't know if you know this, but I worked with the Frax team at my first job, at our first startup.
That's the wiki thing, right?
Yep. Yeah. Everpedia, formerly Everpedia, now IQ Wiki. So I saw firsthand the insane work ethic of Sam and Travis. And it's nothing I've ever seen before and nothing I've really seen since. Like, they're obsessed. And they already had that learning curve. I mean, Sam has been in crypto for 10 years. Like, he had, even in 2017, when we first were getting into crypto with Everpedia, he already had the learning curve with when he was mining Dogecoin. I'm like, oh shit, this guy knows his stuff. But then, like, after doing like a whole project and going through that, and then when Frax came along, like, he already had all this experience on top of, his obsessiveness with this idea, which has really been in development since 2018, like since we first thought of it. And so just seeing the evolution from idea to research to where it is today is really incredible. And like, you really hit the nail on the head in judging character of, the entire Frax team.
Yeah. We just need the rest of the market to see what we see as well.
I know. It's just the thing with Twitter, especially, it highlights demagogues. It doesn't highlight people like Sam. It will highlight Sam when he does say something, because now, he has grown a voice, and when he talks, people listen. But he's not going to be like, the one like, yelling from the rooftops and like trying to like, like play around. He has more important things to do.
Yeah.
And so
a counterexample, you guys remember in last cycle, Daniel Siesta with Frog Nation, right? Like, he was arguably but he was also arguably on Twitter, on Telegram, or Discord rather, like all the time, right? But it just done very differently than how Sam K does it. Well, right, like
the main characters of
he became Sam.
What a throwback.
With Danielle, I like to describe him as Daniel, as he is the archetype of like a South American populist leader from the 30s and 40s, like using very simple, basic language to rile up the common man. Like, I swear to God, he literally tweeted like, "I'm doing this for the 12-hour workers. I'm doing this for the carpet, this and that." But like, this goes to your point about before, like simplifying the language for like general retail to understand, to hop on. So it's not impossible. It's like they just did it with like, magic internet money, like this and that. And they had a lot of great language with it, and it was like people just picked it up, and he was able to rile people up, like whether it was in like Twitter Spaces or in the Discord. Like, he was an incredible leader, but at the same time, with that kind of energy, it's very chaotic. And with populist energy, whether it's in DeFi in 2022 or in South America in 1932, it's unsustainable, and that he just ends up like blowing up at the end of the day. Because like, when you have a populist leader, like, he needs to institutionalize somehow, and they were in the process of institutionalizing. Like, they were like partnering with Orca or Arca or some shit. They like were like about to merge with Sushi. Like, they were about to take over the game, and then it just like all fell apart.
Yeah. Frog Nation.
I studied political science in college. Like, it's like, oh shit, so, like, I can apply this there.
On that note, I want to ask you, what do you think Frax can improve on?
Yeah, good question.
Wow, that's a really big question. I think to be honest, like one we've discussed, getting the community to build these sort of dashboards and sort of educational venues is good, but I do think that there's still a lot more that can be done faster on a more like centralized pace regarding these dashboards, right? Like, if you go to, I think I forgot one of the dashboards is stats.frax, the one where it breaks down the collateral ratio. Collateral ratio is a great example, right? No one, I mean, the average person doesn't know what constitutes the collateral ratio. We need something that breaks it down on these dashboards, right? Let's just show it,
I have two things to say. One, not only do we have like the Frax ecosystem incentives program, but we have the Frax Build Hackathon, where one of the categories is data and analytics. So you can actually win that category and, take it. We want people to build dashboards there. So it's definitely become a priority to us and the entire Frax team. And then the second thing I'd like to say is one of the most exciting things that FrxETH is coming out with very soon is the balance sheet of Frax itself. Like they already have it for FrxETH, but once that balance sheet is up and it updates block by block, that's more transparent than anything, not just in DeFi, but in TradFi, like anything in finance. It is ahead of its time.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So now, aside from this, like any improvements on product, on BD, on strategy, anything more along those lines? Oh,
Yeah, I think BD as well. I don't know how aggressive Frax is on BD, but it just amazes me that when I look at say like Lido, they're obviously very aggressively pursuing anyone with a huge stack of ETH, right? You see them everywhere on these governance forums, just trying to get protocols, chains to stake their ETH with Lido, and the result of that is what we see with Lido today, with more than 10 billion staked ETH. I think Frax is an amazing product. It might not be in its final form, or it might not be a finished product yet. But I think concurrently we can definitely do with very strong BD muscle, someone getting out there, getting protocols to sort of use FrxETH power, stating their ETH with FrxETH. I just don't see why at this point. I'm sure you guys know as well that FrxETH is the best ETH staking derivative out there, but there's no reason why no one should use it over the others.
Yeah, you saw that Hal Press when he was looking for an alternative to Steve. He chose FrxETH.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. And like people were like, why'd you choose Frax, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it has the highest yield. Like, you know what? It's at the end of the day, objectively, it's like the number that matters.
Yeah, it's the number that matters. And at the same time, with FrxETH 2, it's going to be... Yeah, it's going to be even better, right? It's going to be even better than...
Way more decentralized, too.
Way more decentralized, even better for validators and not just the users as well. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, and I would like to specify my point when I said it's the number that matters. It's the number that matters to like the people with ETH, like in traders. Like to me, I care about decentralization, but I want to make that like clear before anybody misquotes me.
Yes.
And also, if you think about it, sorry, I just want to go into FrxETH a little because I think there are two main differentiators about any sort of liquid stake ETH, right? It's one, obviously the number, the yield, but second is also liquidity. I mean, as much as with withdrawal queues, you still need some time to get your ETH out, and the point is, with how the FrxETH AMO works, there's always this huge, thick amount of liquidity there that allows you to quickly get out of FrxETH into ETH. So yeah, I just think that on no matter how you cut it, like FrxETH is just the best set of staking.
There's no second best.
Yeah,
I agree.
Actually, you nailed on the exact question that I wanted to ask you. As a fund manager, trader, and a very, very active market participant, liquidity is a key concern here. And with the curve pool kind of sitting at 70-30 or whatever the rate is, there's about like 30,000 ETH being paired against FrxETH. Like, does that raise any concerns to you? Do you think that is like a huge blockade for folks to deposit into FrxETH? I would love to get your thoughts on that.
Sorry, so you're saying there's a huge amount of liquidity in the curve pool, and that would deter folks from depositing?
There's an imbalance between the curve pool right now. There's 70% of FrxETH and 30% of ETH.
Yeah, I saw this on the chat as well. So, so someone asked this on the chat too, right? And basically, I think it's another one of those concept that people just don't understand, that's very unfairly being misconstrued. I think the best way to sort of explain this in the most simple ways, if you just go to the curve pool, there is an imbalance But if you just punch in the number of how much you want to trade out of it, you still get, a fair amount of it. It's still, almost close to a 1-to-1. And at the same time, when it's more imbalanced, the AMO, that's when the AMO steps in, right? And that's sort of where it balances itself, and that's how the protocol makes money, and that's how the protocol runs itself. I think that's just how it is, and people just shouldn't look at the optically, imbalanced number and just come to a quick conclusion that there's something wrong here. It's going to depeg. If it depegs, just buy it.
Yeah. Because it's not completely obvious that like the imbalance is actually profitable for the protocol. Because one, it's like they have their protocol on liquidity, and there's more FrxETH in there for a reason. And two, when it imbalances and the AMO like goes to work rebalancing the pool, it profits off that ARB. So there's like multiple ways the protocol is making money.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, for that soundbite. That's all I needed.
Yeah, and so go ahead, Kit.
No, go ahead, Dave.
Okay,
lead us in.
I wanted, now that we're talking about the investment thesis a little bit, I want to get into, because you're preparing something. You're preparing a big report that's going to come out pretty soon. That basically summarizes your conviction. It's like a buy side or sell side like report about FrxETH. Can we go into like the main takeaways of the report and like where you have like a price target for Frax in the future?
Yeah, I mean, let's start the first part, which is how the report is structured. I think where we sort of gained rapid conviction on Frax is quite simply when you look at the price level of Frax, right? There are a few ways to explain this. The simplest and most retail friendly way I explain this is when this token gets to the $4 to $5 level, just buy it, and often it just goes up. And there's a very simple reason why, because the team is awesome. They will keep building, and you have a very good chance that what they're building will get paid attention to by the market, and that catches a bid, and that's sort of how you get rewarded. But obviously, we don't want the quick investment guys just paying attention to Frax. The way I describe it in my report as well is longer term. If you look at the history of Frax and what they built, it's come obviously a long way since V1. You have AMOs, you have stake ETH product, and you have FrexFerry, which is almost equivalent of like a CCP. You have Fraxchain upcoming. Eventually, we'll have FrxBTC. We'll have so many of these parts, and yet it still trades at close to the lows of the range, right? Which tells you that obviously these parts are not being valued, right? At the same time, the report would also do some sort of sizing on the value accrual to Frax from a fundamental basis. How much money is Frax making? And is this valuation, truly, maybe it's too expensive, that's why it's valued at the lows, but what was discovered is it is not, right? Frax and Sam, and this is not proprietary information, this is on the public Telegram chat, that Sam has also said that Frax makes, close to 20 million annualized in revenue per year. I think, on a clean time multiple, that's pretty fair. And I think clean time is, in fact cheap, because this protocol is growing so rapidly, so quickly. It's venturing into so many other streams of functions, features and revenues that definitely we'll see that grow as well. So that's sort of formed, I think, that first part of the report, which is establishing this asymmetric risk reward, right? That there is a valuation floor that I think the recent buyback program that we've proposed, that I think is due for vote today, will sort of reinforce this valuation, because it's the protocol signaling to the market and telling the market that, hey, look, it's so cheap that we're willing to deport protocol balance sheet into buying our own tokens. And at the same time, it's not a crazy proposal that aims to only enrich short-term traders, right? It is a very, I think, measured a proposal where it buys aggressively below 4, which we rarely get there, and in fact we only get there for a couple of days in history since the AMOs. and then starts buying, a bit, below 5. So I think it's fair measure. So now that I've established like the downside, that's the first part of the report. The upside and the second part of the report is where we hope to uncover the upcoming catalyst, which we think in the next 6 to 12 months is extremely exciting, right? You have Fraxchain, which I think is extremely exciting. You have FrxETH V2. I think FrxETH V2 is much more exciting than what people thought because
oh my God,
because if you think about it, right, Rocket Pool and Coinbase ETH have about $1.5 to $2 billion of stake ETH. Frax is like 400 to 500 million. And like we mentioned earlier, this is the superior product. So I don't see why it catches, and I don't see why it doesn't catch up to like 2, right? And if we think about Lido as well, one of the big reason, or one of the big drivers of how stake ETH grew to its size was all of these like looped stake ETH on Aave. You guys remember, right? People just depositing stake ETH as collateral, borrowing ETH, and keep looping that, and that's sort of like 5x existing stake ETH, right? The math. But stake FrxETH is still not available on Aave. Stake FrxETH is only available as collateral to borrow Frax, so it's not loopable yet. Mm-hmm. And to my knowledge, if I'm not wrong, it's pending proposal to be on Aave. And I think when that comes, it'll be a massive wave of loop demand. I mean, if you're looping, you definitely go for the highest yield one, right? It's common sense. So I think definitely stake FrxETH goes to like 2 billion. And just on some back of envelope math, 2 billion or 5% yield, the 10%, 8% to protocol is something like $8 million to the protocol. I think that's significant for sure. That's almost half the existing revenues today. So all in all, I think the report puts together the present, why it's cheap, and the future as to why it will drive growth, right? So another back of the envelope math, just simple, right? Frax is valued at like 400 to 500 million market cap today. Mm-hmm. Stablecoin business, I think at the lows, it's like a 300 million market cap business. I think at the lows, right? At the lows, so conservative bear market type valuation. Fraxchain L2, like most low activity L2s have like 100 million in market cap. We're talking like the Bobas and Metis networks and stuff like that, right? Then we have stake FrxETH. So stake FrxETH gets to like 8 million in revenue, slap on like a 29 multiple. That's something like close to 160 to 200 million. You put all this together, it's already like a 600 million market cap. That's conservative. If we go into like a more bull market back of envelope math, then let's say stake FrxETH gets valued closer to Rocket Pool, which is already 700 million by itself. Fraxchain goes to something closer to like 300 million, 400 million, like an injective. Let's not even talk about optimism or arbitrage. That's already like 300 to 400 million. Just these two parts are already $1 billion in market cap, and the stable coin in a bull market, because curve price goes up, it starts minting a lot of revenues that also easily gets $500 million. So my point is, there's obviously a huge range of numbers that you can use your imagination to play with. It's sort of it is what you want it to be. But the point is as well that it's even on very conservative numbers, we have a significant upside to the valuations.
Well said. Well said.
A part of the report that I really like as well is we have this myth butters section where there are a lot of these like myths about Frax that we address. Stuff like less than 1 collateral ratio means Frax is unsafe and it can be pegged. Where we sort of address these myths, which I really like that section, because these are sort of comments that I've seen in the chat, in my tweets, people just asking me as well, and I think that section, in fact, deserves an entire dashboard myself, probably on like Frax FAQ on Frax page.
Yeah, safety Frax.
I love all of that bull energy and that bull posting. Okay, now I was gonna come in and ask, as a fund manager and a person who manages your risk very effectively, what are some of the risks to your thesis here?
Wow. I think the biggest risk, which I also address in the report, is obviously we know that there's a huge overhang from this whole SEC token as a security, Salmon's team based in the US type of fun, right? But at the same time, the team is working on it. It's FrxETH will decentralize Frax, which will make Frax functioning regardless of, whether the team is around or not. And to be very honest, the SEC's definition of a security, of a token as a security, pretty much makes almost everything security. So it's sort of like the risk that you have to grapple as a
systemic,
as a crypto trader or investor, right? You sort of manage that, you think about that, right? And sort of size up your trades that way.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add, what is the most profitable business in all of crypto right now? It's not Binance. It's not Coinbase.
Stable coins, right? Think about
Tether.
that.
It's Tether.
Yeah.
Tether is just raking in money at these interest rates. Just like, it's just raining. It's just absolutely pouring bills everywhere. And just to think, like, if Tether is like where it is today, like, where could Frax be? Where could Frax be with Fraxchain? Where could Frax be when it gets to the FMA? Where could Frax be with FrxETH V2? It's, I don't want to get myself too excited, but it's going places.
Yeah, I think the dream, for me, I mean, I wouldn't call it a dream, but I think, what I would love to see from Frax, and I think probably not too far away, is, one day being able to load a crypto credit card with Frax and just spend it. And I think there's people will ask, why do I need to do that as Tether? I think there's a huge demand for that because there are parts of the world which, don't like how, Tether is. I mean, one, obviously everyone doesn't like how it's dodgy, but more above other stuff as, how Tether and USDC, it touches US banking rails, which means, there is a certain degree of centralization behind it. And, if you're in parts of the world that can be easily sanctioned against by the US, you're always running this fear that there's a chance that, your wallet, with the USDC or Tether frozen. Obviously, that's not a very common thing today, but it's still risk. I think one just likes their money to be controlled by someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to add to that question, like, what else does success look like to you, for Frax?
I think right now a lot of the usage of Frax is still not daily, usage. It's still very much a DeFi product. People use Frax to earn yield, or they use Frax to deposit it somewhere. And most of the Frax today is in fact protocol control, right? I think success would be eventually the usage of Frax being almost equivalent to the usage of DAI, which is very prevalent. You can use it as a means of transaction. It no longer is seen just as a DeFi product, but also just as another mainstream stablecoin. You can use it and you can transact with it, right? If you guys remember the days of UST, right? Like Terra, they were using it to transact in Korea. So
they really got that monetary premium right for UST when it was a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Monetary premium, that's the word.
Got it. So you're still of the school of thought where it's the medium of exchange, the store of value, and the unit of account. And that is what success looks like for the Frax stablecoin. Do you have any thoughts on what the FrxETH stablecoin success looks like?
Could you say it's the same thing?
I would say that it's not the same thing because if we look at the biggest ETH product, which is Fido's ETH, it's basically, a financial product, right? Everyone's taking their ETH because they want yield. So I think hopefully
We hear some
Just
friends
pause
in the
1 second.
background.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
so
One sec.
friends.
My dog.
Yeah, all good.
My dog is kind of agitated or something. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay, cool. It's weird. So I would say give this.
Bullish Frax. He's so bullish
Yeah.
he cannot code it in.
He can't contain himself, the dog. Oh man.
Oh man, this is such a good pod. Like I love hearing another person that is not us so convicted on Frax.
Back to the pond. Yeah, I have a black.
Heavy.
I have a Shiba actually.
You have a Shiba.
Yeah.
That's incredibly
Very on
fitting.
brand. On brand.
Everything around me is crypto. I was saying, I think we need the majority of the market to realize how FrxETH has these features that is superior to the rest of the liquid staking tokens. And I still think a majority of the market don't realize it yet. And that's how I think success looks.
Okay.
How can Frax increase its monetary premiums to get that kind of adoption that you saw at UST before its fall, that you see with DAI, that you see with USDC and Tether?
I think it's BD. I think we need more BD.
Okay.
And I mean, look at Reserve Protocol, right?
Yeah, we had him on.
Yeah. So look at them. There's real uses of their tokens in LATAM, right? And I think
that's right.
Frax has been around longer, if not as long as them, and I don't see why Frax can get there. I think the only things that's stopping us at the moment is because Frax is still largely on Ethereum, right? But with Fraxchain, that's when sort of we move a lot of Frax to Fraxchain, where gas costs are almost free, and that's where Frax can be used in transactions.
You could have gas subsidized for free transactions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And not to forget, like Fraxchain uses FrxETH, right? Or for gas, or for So that also is a flywheel.
I really want to write a proposal to change the name of Fraxchain to Fractal. I think Fractal would really take off.
Why not Fraxchain?
I've talked with Sam about it. I talked with a few other people. Like usually a roll up or another. It's usually like something like like Avalanche or Polygon or Optimism. Like you don't really see like chain in the name itself. And so Sam, he brought up the idea of calling it Fraxmalism. It's kind of, to me, that's a little bit of a mouthful because it's like optimism, but I think Fractal is perfect because I more recently described Frax as a fractal of DeFi because of stable coins and the sub protocols. I think it's like easy to grasp. I think people could get it. I think it could really hit marketing wise with, the most average user that might not have a lot of, they say, oh, Fractal. And, I think it could be a sick name. You can do sick branding with it. Like I'm all in Fractal.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
I think we need to do some focus group testing. Let's drop some polls in all of the group chats in Telegram.
Yeah. I think right now I did a poll on Twitter recently, and it was basically neck and neck between Fractal and Fraxchain.
Pretty good.
Well, yeah. Sorry. Okay. I was on mute. Yeah.
No. I'll get. Actually, I wanted to. Dave, are you done with kind of Frax related questions?
Done.
I want to. Cool. I want to shift gears a little bit and ask. Are there one other project that you have similar conviction in?
No. No. I have other projects which I have other projects which I have high conviction in as well. But I think Frax ticks all of the checkboxes. I think the hardest checkbox to tick is really the team. I think that's a hard one. Yeah.
Got it.
And that's not something that's not something you can fix like overnight, right? That takes time.
That
That's why
goes
it's
into like
hard
the
to.
DNA of the project itself. It's actually more so the soul. The project itself is, the team and the community that coalesces around the project and the team, and like the community that the team attracts. And I think if you see the community of Frax and what the team has, kind of attracted to it, it's a lot of people that understand nuance. It's a lot of people that understand like, okay, like you have to be patient. Like, okay, like what's being cooked up here. But over time, it's like, oh, like now I understand. Like, oh, now we understand.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
And
had another.
I feel
Go ahead.
I just want to add a comment. I just feel like also the fact that the team is so integral to kind of like why we're also bullish on it. Frankly, also another vector of risk, right? Them all being based in the
Well,
US and, yes,
I'm.
FraxGov can come on and all that stuff, but I just still feel that you just
I would.
talked about it. The
I
team
would
is
say
the
like
soul.
I would still say the project's still early. Like it was like it's 2.5 years old, and so at this point early on, I think it still needs like the love, tender, and care of the core team, much less than it used to. Like I think we all can admit that like significant strides have been made for decentralization, and even more significant strides are going to be made in the future. But it's still like I think DAI is like 6 years old. Ethereum
Hmm.
is 9 years old. If it's six, if it's 6 years since birth or 9 years since like Frax's genesis, and the team's still like heavily involved, then I'd be like, okay, like we haven't decentralized enough. But I think we're on like the correct pace. We're on the correct time scale towards
Hmm.
decentralization.
And just speak a little bit more to that, an example of the team kind of doing it is us, right? Flywheel is
Yes,
completely community driven, is completely just from good folks, core advocates. We're the core
the core
advocates
advocate.
of the
Yeah,
Frax
I
team, right? And
think
I
yeah.
want to get your take on that. Like, how do you? Because Frax, the core team is only like 8 Navy SEAL devs that just crank at product all day.
Yeah.
Like, they don't do the marketing. Like, you just see them Telegram, hey guys, we launched Fraxland, thanks, bye, back to work. Like that's
Yeah.
partly what the shit they
Yeah.
do. So how do you think about like organizations like Flywheel, and I'm sure others in the future is going to come out and start supporting Frax? Do you like this kind of decentralization, or do you think it's like less efficient?
I I think I have like a mixed view about it. I like that. I think what I let's start with what I like first. I think what I like is you end up with people that's really passionate and they have true ownership of what they proposed and what they're trying to build as an extension to Frax, right? Guys, like you guys came up with the idea, you made the product, you own it, right? And you have true ownership over the product versus an employee who's probably, not as motivated because, they don't have true ownership of the product. They're just being instructed and they're just being assigned certain project responsibility. But what I don't like is then you have to wait, right? You have to wait for that person to come, that person to sort of have this idea and build this out. And that gives me an idea, right? How do you have something like you guys, but it's like a BDR of like Frax, right? Like someone that's like, write a proposal and be like, hey, like, we can do all of this BD for Frax, but how do you get incentivized? Because it's hard to measure, right? It's hard to measure BD. Yeah.
BD is an intangible profession. Like as someone that has worked in BD in the past for years in crypto, it's hard to measure and hard to really gauge until you're gone. Until that BD person is gone, then you realize like, oh, like that's what's been missing. Because it's just like it's not just like what you bring in. Like yeah, there's KPIs, but it's kind of the vibe you bring to it, the energy you bring to it. And I think us at Flywheel, we're doing some BD role. Like I like to think when we do these interviews, like let's say we have a project come on, we talk, and we actually just come up with ideas on the fly. Like hell, today earlier we were doing, I call it open source BD with Resonate. I'm like, hey, like why don't you guys talk about to Hourglass about getting on their exchange? And it's like, oh, that's a good idea. And we've done the same thing with protocols in the past. Like we've had the Gearbox guys on. They went to got on to get an AMO in the future. So we're doing our part, and I'd be down to do more BD in the future as well. I'm just like I'd like to ask you more about that after the show. It's like, how would we like come up with like a BD plan for like Frax and Flywheel?
Yeah, so it's exactly to your point. BD is so intangible, and it's not something you can design with a blueprint. It's actually a lot of hustle, right? It's a free form. It's a free form. You're just out there going to people, asking people, just floating the idea. It's just nonstop doing that, and so that's tough. I think that's where it's tough.
I will, yeah. I'll also add that it's incredibly hard to like get funding to do BD in a public forum, just from experience. Like I've done it before. I've like been like, sometimes I've been successful, like, and sometimes I haven't. But it's really difficult because it's like one of those intangible things you can't measure, and because it's intangible, you can't really point to anything. So it's like really easy to shoot down.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is a shame, right? Because crypto is kind of built on this whole mechanism of incentivization design and how you can get people to be motivated to do work. It's actually built to incentivize these kind of intangible things, right? These economic factors that would just push us to do more. And I feel like BD, just not just in the Frax sense, but like across all of crypto, if you have a person or a group of individuals who are ready to be your evangelist, like go let them go and evangelize, right? And evangelizing is similar to BDing, where it's kind of intangible. It's just as long as you kind of spread the gospel and you kind of get it out there. I think that needs to
advocates.
be there needs to be a budget that is just like almost just for core advocacy and core evangelizing, in my opinion, on the DAO's balance sheet.
Actually, that's a great idea. There should be a dedicated budget, and everyone, maybe every quarter, every month is free to do whatever BD they do. And if there's a successful introduction and it gets clocked somewhere, and maybe the top like 5 BD people get a split of this like monthly budget, I think that's a great idea. But yeah.
Okay, we'll workshop this after the pod. Oh, this sounds good.
Yeah, there's actually that's basically what I do for Gelato right now since I left. I get them intros, and if they end up getting integrations and following through on those integrations being used, I get commission. And so
yeah, this is all.
Yeah.
No, go on.
You go ahead.
No, as I say, this is what we do as well as advisors, right? I mean, I advise a number of protocols, and it's not technical, right? I'm not a dev. Well, what we do as advisors is, speccing out how obviously, that the product would look to make it as retail friendly, as commercial as possible. But more often than not, it's BD. It's just connecting, the protocols that we know to each other, protocols that we have invested into each other, and hope that they can work together. And that's sort of, it's the same thing. So yeah.
Great. And just we're kind of coming up to the tail end of the pod here, but I wanted
tail
to ask
end, you say.
Oh, nice. No pun intended. I meant to do that.
Pun
intended. But as we approach the end, which is also the beginning, and of my next question, and that is, outside of DeFi, are you looking at what else excites you in crypto right now?
Wow. To be honest, because like I mentioned at the start, I came from a finance background, so there's always this natural inclination towards DeFi. And to be honest, these days, while people can very easily be excited over a lot of new tech, I tend to, I am quite a skeptic, so I tend to wait and see before they come. So not much. I'm actually more, I would say that I'll answer the question in another way, which is I'm actually very skeptical over many of these existing valuations in crypto, especially, some of these metaverse games kind of stuff. I just struggle to see how these things command the kind of valuations that they command. Yeah.
Yeah. That leads to my next question. You come from, more equities background, institutional background. what are your thoughts on institutional adoption of DeFi? How do you see it playing out over the next few years? And how does Frax fit into that adoption?
To be honest, I think it's a long way till institutions adopt DeFi. I think if you think about the DNA of an institution, we're talking about banks and all of these like finance companies. They want to keep the pie to themselves, and going into DeFi is the antithesis of that, right? Which is why we've seen a lot of in the early innings of or these early glimpses of institutional adoption in 21 or 22 during the bull market were these permission pools, because KYC obviously matters, right? You're staking years of reputation and years of brand equity going to this really frontier product. So I actually think that institutional adoption is in itself is oxymoron. I just don't think that it happens. Yeah.
Okay.
I think at the end of the day, it's a retail product, and that doesn't mean that it's small, because as we have mentioned, right, monetary premium. You can have merchants using it, consumers using it, just the average Joe using it, and that in itself is a huge TAM.
Yeah. Speaking of permission pools, I definitely see a future with permissioned rollups. I can see JP Morgan rolling up to the scene. I can see Goldman Sachs rolling up to the scene. Like, I feel like if it's hard for me to see like institutions wanting to like play in the pool with the rest of us. Like you said, they want to own their stack. Like they've had this thing set up in a certain way for decades, and it's going to be hard for them to let go. It's just like a matter of how those. But now I'm just kind of getting ahead of myself there. But
which is the irony, right? Because the point of blockchain is
what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. It has to be open. It has to be accessible. I mean, what's the point? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But here, all this talk got me thinking about Base, right? And when Base, like Coinbase's Base, and when that blue circle launches on Optimism, or using Optimism as a stack,
OP stack,
the OP stack, the Bedrock rather, and start using Bedrock. Maybe it looks something like that, right? They have millions of users. Institutions are already using them for custody. So with that brand equity of Base can be a really nice kind of bridge. It's an easier pill to swallow. Like, hey, we know Coinbase, this is their thing, and maybe we can start playing a little bit in DeFi and offering it to like our Wells Fargo retail users, the ones who are like the younger crowd and wants to get a bit of this, DeFi stuff.
Yeah, I definitely see them offering products on chain, but for example, like tokenized treasuries and stuff like that, right? That's easy. But I just don't see how they would run an entire DeFi ecosystem like the DeFi that we're used to, and just allowing it to, be so open and anyone to just walk in and use it. I mean, I'm not criticizing the way that they approach this, because understandably, like I said, they have compliance practices to work around. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that makes me all the more excited for Fractal coming out. Yeah, I'm gonna
nice cap
right there. Yeah, and on that note, I think we've reached the end, which is also the beginning. But we're gonna take it back to something that we always do. At the end of these interviews, which is the lightning round. So we take a break from the DeFi and go more into Ouroboros as the person.
Yeah, we want to get to know the person behind the PFP. So
behind the wheel.
The first question I always like to start with is like, when did you first touch the blockchain? What was your virgin crypto experience? And sexist doesn't count.
Wow, sexist doesn't count. I think it's late 2020, and I think it was SushiSwap or Uniswap. I forgot. Yeah,
my favorite food emoji farms. All right. Second question. What is your favorite off-chain touch grass activity, hobbies, and interests?
The sports for sure.
What sports?
What type?
Winter sports like snowboarding.
Snowboarding. Nice.
Yeah, we don't have snow in Singapore, so unfortunately I have to travel for that.
Have you been
Where
to
do you
the
go?
same? Do you go like Japan, where Arthur Hayes?
Yeah,
goes?
Japan,
Yeah.
Cool.
What's some advice you would give to your younger self?
Wow. I would say always, if you don't understand something and most of the world doesn't understand it, there's probably a lot of value in not writing it off.
Oh yeah, that's basically how I live my life.
Should have met you when I was younger. Should have met you when I was younger.
Yeah. I kind of determined that during DeFi summer. It's like, I really don't get all of this, but if I get enough of it, and like I can have a grasp, be comfortable, and be able to conversate and get like the points of it, then I think I'll be good. And this is how I'm running Flywheel. This is how I ended up running Flywheel, honestly.
Yeah, I think crypto taught me that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta know. You don't have to know everything. You have to know. You can just know enough, because there are other people that know everything and fill in the gaps. But go ahead, Kit.
And then for me, speaking of people, it's finding the right people. And like, no matter what it is that you do, it could be crypto, it could not be crypto. But it's like, for me, it's like finding the right people and the right crowd that is yours. And then that's how you kind of really grow.
I always know I have Sam in the Telegram if I have any questions.
Fact. Yes. So question on my end is, if you weren't in finance, were not in crypto, what would your professional career be?
Dog breeder.
Dog breeder. I can see that.
Shibas or
Shiba breeder?
Everything.
Everything.
Wow.
Okay.
First time.
Yeah, that is a first. And now we're on to our last question. Who would you like to see as a guest on Flywheel?
Hill Press.
How press? Oh,
all right.
Could you guys
make the intro? Yeah. Make the intro. We'll bring
Make
him
the
on.
intro.
Sure, I could connect you guys after show.
Oh, hell yeah. Oh, yeah. We'd love to have him on.
Yeah.
Sweet. And on that note, we're pressing forward to the end. Ouroboros, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, guys.
And where can people find you?
On Twitter, just DM me.
I DM you. And when should we expect that report?
So next week likely will be out because I did commit to a day. I did commit to a day with Dave. So my feet is being out to the fire. Otherwise, I'll just keep procrastinating on it. But
this is why we do this. Yeah. So like this week, this is going to come out next week, which will be this week. So
next week, yeah,
it's incoming. Ouroboros, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, sir.
And hope to have you again soon.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
All right, everyone. You know what time it is. Post game. I'm DeFi Dave here with Capital K. We just ripped the show with Ouroboros Capital, the snake that eats its tail. But it's great. It's constant rebirth, death and rebirth, death and rebirth. And I feel like Frax is in a constant state of death and rebirth, death and rebirth. We go through this cycle of like, oh, your narrative, we catch a bit, and then boom, we go down. And it's like, oh, like it's like how do we get that like start, and like how can we get the rest of DeFi and the rest of crypto to see what all three of us see in Frax?
I think, O nailed it on two fronts. One is being accessibility of information, whether it be via dashboards or infographics or threads or et cetera. Or second is the BD efforts. Like I really think we could do a much harder drive there. And I think we should definitely have an internal discussion at Flywheel about this.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, we definitely should see like what they're looking for, what they need, what their goals are. I know the team is quite methodical in their strategy, and like when it's time to do BDE, like they're gonna step up and do it. But maybe there's something we can do. I mean, we've been doing it, so I'd love to help any way I can. That's why we're all here. What were some of your biggest takeaways from this episode?
For me, hold on one second. Let me review our question list just so I can refresh here. I what I really like was what he said about equities are something that you can actually talk to the founder and get a grasp of like this person, that's this person's DNA, their mental, who they are, and how that kind of drives the stock, which is very different from Forex, right? You can't just call up the central bank and be
Yeah.
like, yo. So
I
I
think
like
yeah,
that he took that and applied it to crypto in the very real sense of the word.
I learned a lot from that kind of viewpoint and how people centric crypto really is. Like, with the team and the project founders and the community, and like how much he emphasized BD and the importance of BD and getting out there. And another great example of BD, we talked about like Terra, like they had great BD, but like look at Polygon. Polygon has
Oh
such
yeah,
great BD.
yeah.
They have such great BD that when Donald Trump dropped his NFTs on there, everyone's like, who did that? Who did that? No one knew. They just did it on there because Polygon became the standard for cheap chain NFTs.
Yeah. It was also a great rebrand from a side chain to an L2, right? Like no one really just talk about that anymore. They just talk about Polygon as almost a part of ETH, just
Yeah, it's like
as
it's little cousin.
yeah, exactly. So and that was great. And I also like his whole how he broke down his investment thesis on like why we're bullish now, kind of runs through the math a little bit with the back of the envelope stuff, plus all the catalysts that's going to come from that, and also kind of bookend it with like, hey, here are the risks, but also all the mitigations. And just for the
Yeah.
folks listening at home, that is literally the template that I was taught in equity analysis at school. Literal template.
Buy the book. Buy the book.
This is literally by the book. I pulled up my old template and I was like, yep. Okay,
That's
there's
it.
a risk section that he skipped over. I got to ask this. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think my favorite part is just how goddamn bullish he is and how much fucking conviction he has. And like he just real recognized real. And he sees the team, he sees them work. He basically sees what like I saw in the team firsthand in person. He saw from, seeing like how they acted in the chat, seeing like how they carry themselves, in public, seeing all these different things that like go into like, hey, like what makes a protocol tick? What's going to make a protocol tick, and what's going to make it, last the long haul?
And
so
how to
like
ship
his
product.
read, how to ship, and how to fucking ship like there's no tomorrow.
Correct.
Yeah.
I also feel like his last bit about like there are literally no other projects that he has this much conviction in.
None.
I thought
None.
I was very surprised to hear that because as a fund manager who manages outside capital, not just his own, and he's taking like such a concentrated bet. This is not saying this FXS is his only position, but I'm just saying for him to have so much conviction only behind one name, that's really freaking cool, especially in the bear market.
Dude, he's our guy.
Yeah, he's like, I would love to have him on. Like, I think he's a great temperature check on what the real fundamental driven investor in this crypto space are currently thinking, and like what's kind of their appetite. I think he's a great temperature check. We should have him on at least once a quarter.
Yeah, quarterly report with Ouroboros.
Yeah,
one chip around the sun. I mean, 4 chips around the sun.
Yeah.
Or yeah. There's so many like golden points in this. We really went down memory lane, talking about DeFi Summer, talking about in the rise of certain
Daniel
DeFi demagogue, Daniel Siesta. Like, it's really a testament to how long Frax has stayed around and how many storms it has weathered to this very day. And Lindy does accrue over time, and it's just a matter of just grinding it out. But I really did like his kind of like where could Frax improve, and that's with BD. It's like it seems like if we could have a similar aggressive BD strategy like a Lido, like going to every forum saying like, hey, you should like you should allocate your ETH to us, like if we had like a strategy like that, that would be like pretty dope. What do you think? You're muted.
Dude. I think for 100%, like Flywheel could do a lot more job in pushing, even if it's just pushing people to hold FrxETH, right? Like just pushing protocols to hold FrxETH.
Yeah,
like, what's stopping us from just throwing that proposal up?
I mean, like like I said, it's like so hard with like the proposals because it's it's hard to measure intangible value. I think like the team recognizes it, and people, I know the team recognizes it. I know people like Ouroboros and other people in the community recognize it, but it's a matter of getting other people to recognize it. It's like, oh, like why aren't we doing like this BD stuff? But BD is actually intangible. It's like the shit that you got to do. And so like, I've like tried to like figure out like proposals. Like before I did the FrxETH, referral proposal that got pushed back and would incentivize us to like go out there and do BD for FrxETH, but it, I didn't even like get it up to a vote because it got so much pushback. I was like arguing with people about, I'm just like, all right, fine. Like,
it's not worth it. Yeah. No, I think it just needs probably a bit more structure around like, hey, we're going to do 5 proposals per week, and we're going to aim for a 50% success rate. So our target for like the quarter is the 60 total number of DAOs to add FrxETH, and then we'll track the total number of FrxETH that is in these DAOs' treasury. You know what I'm saying? Like we could structure something where it's quite tangible in terms of like our efforts in getting the BD done, and also the outcome and the results, which is obviously the TVL of FrxETH increasing that we're responsible for. I think there's definitely room for that.
Yeah. We want to get involved. We're here. Like we're the Flywheel team. Like Frax is in our DNA.
Frax facts.
Yeah, that's some Frax facts right there.
Yes.
Put our name on it. But yeah, I think that's it for the post game. Any final thoughts?
No, I thought this was a great one. Oh, one last final thought for all you fundamentalist analysts out there. What he did with the back of the envelope math is, just simple comps analysis of looking at like, hey, this part of the business is like this, that part of the business is like this. So, Fraxchain, similar to an L1, call it like the cheaper L1, call it Metis or something else. And then for the LSD part, call it like, Rocket Pool or something like that. Then call the stablecoin part, value at this level or something like that. So I definitely love how he was able to take 2 different sides of analysis. One almost driven like a DCF type of revenue fundamental analysis. And then the second is a comps analysis. So and those are great fundamental analysis tools to use.
Take notes, everyone. And if you want to take notes on every episode of Flywheel, make sure you hit that bell button and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Give us a like. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at FlywheelDeFi. Join our Telegram group at FlywheelDeFi. You can follow me on Twitter at DeFiDave22.
You can follow me at 0xcapital_K.
Subscribe to the Substack, and we'll see you next week.
Go, 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 go. Peace.
Everything said on this episode is not financial or tax advice. This channel is strictly for educational purposes and is not an investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any assets or to make any financial decisions. This video is not tax advice whatsoever. Please talk to your accountant and do your own research.